What's up, YouTube friends? So today I want to go over the differentials and the differences between what you guys might have heard as V1 versus V2 differentials in the E46 M3. So what I have in front of me are two differentials. So this one is the V1 and this one is the V2. The differential itself is exactly the same. The only thing that is actually different is the LSD unit, which when I pop the covers off, I will show you. From what I can tell, the casings, all the markings are the same. So everything between these two differentials in terms of output shafts, casing, spacing, seals, bearings inside, everything is exactly the same. Now, how would you know if you have a V1 versus a V2? When I open up the box, it'll be easier to see, but the way that you know is you look at the play in these output shafts. So you can hopefully see on the V2 unit there is play on the driver's side or left side output shaft here. There's no play on the passenger side or the right side of it. For the V1 unit, there's a difference. For the V1 unit, there's play on the right side or the passenger side and no play on the driver's side or the left side. So let's take off the cover and take a look at why that is. Before I do that, just a quick note. So you guys know all these bolts that come out, right? There are 8, so there are 4 pairs. If you forget to mark where they come from, it's actually really easy to understand. The bottom of the cover is the thickest, the top of the cover is the thinnest. So you literally just put in the bolts in terms of the length. Shortest bolt, longer, longer, and longest. Okay. You guys will see the difference between the units. Okay, so once you take off the cover, it is a lot easier to see the difference. For the, what is called, so on the left one, the V1 unit, you can see there's a circular cutout here. And you can see the spider gears and the side gears. For the V2 unit, you can see it's shaped a little bit differently. It's a little bit more, I guess, cylindrical. And this one is a little bit more tapered here toward the end, but what you can see here is more of a rectangular cutout. And you can see the clutch back here. The only thing that's different between these two, well, if you're actually looking at for exact details on these two differentials, like this one has the stock gearing, this one has the 410 gearing, but outside of that, the only thing that's different between these two differentials is this LSD unit. It's this thing, okay? So maybe let's start with the V1 unit, which is maybe a little bit simpler. So, and hopefully you can see and understand why there's play on the right side on this one. The output shaft here can only go in so far up to here. You can kind of see it maybe through that hole, but it butts up against the side gears, right? This output shaft goes through the entire length and all the way up to here, so it's a lot longer. So there's just a lot more material to hold it more sturdy versus the short one is a stubby one. And that's why it just has that play. So on the V1 unit, the spider gears and the side gears are on the right side, and the clutches and the clutch pack are over here on the left side of the LSD unit. The V2 unit is kind of flipped. So you can see the clutch pack. So the clutch pack, I'll show some pictures later, but a clutch pack is basically like a disc which has a hole through it. So that means that the output shaft can actually go through the center of the clutch pack. So the right side here is very long and butts up against the side gears right about here, while the left side on the V2 is the short one. The short one is the one that has more play in it. And so the LSD units are kind of flip-flopped, if you will, right, in terms of the design of where the clutch pack is versus the spider gears and the side gears, right? Again, just reiterating, all of the seals, all of the bearings, let's see if you can see the bearings in there. So there's a pinion. All of the bearings and everything else between the two units is exactly the same, except for this LSD unit. So on the V1 unit, you can probably see a part of that shaft right there that goes in from this long output flange that meets up, so it's really long, and then there's the short stubby one on the right side. For this one I cannot do that because the clutch pack is kind of covering up, but you can see the spider gears are right there. Okay. Why do I have these two differentials? Well, funny enough, I have one in my car still, so I have a third differential, and I have also got some spare LSD units from friends around. What you can see in terms of the design, the V1 unit, the way that you open up the unit to, you know, take out those spider gears to replace the clutches there inside and everything else, are through this top plate. So these guys, let me see if I can find them. Well, they're 4 Allen bolts that actually hold the top plate, this plate, to the LSD unit. And once you take that off, you have the stack of clutches here, plus a bunch of other stuff, and then the gears are just stacked on top of each other. For this guy, hopefully you can see it, let's see, I'm gonna rotate it a few times. So this is now facing me, but you can see this guy. That is a ball that's preventing this plate from unthreading. And so the V2 unit is actually opened up. If I put it back side by side, the V2 unit is actually opened up, not from this side, but it's actually opened up from this side. And it's a screw-on plate. This one is just held on by, like I said, like 4 Allen bolts, and you just pull it off. This one actually unscrews. And then everything else here is stacked. So the V2 unit is a lot harder to rebuild in terms of what's required from like specialty tools, right? Because you can see here, once you take out that ball, there's 1, 2, I think there's 6 or 8 of these like little grooves into which you need to put in like a special prong tool to untwist that cap. And then from there you remove all of the clutch packs and everything else and the gears. And then the other difference is that the spider gears here are actually held in by a dowel with a C-clip, so they're actually kind of like fixed in place. In this unit, everything is just stacked on top of each other. Like these are not really held in. You can see there's no hole. So the spider gear is going in through here as well as here. There's no pin here, just keeping it in place, which means that it can have some play in it. So what you guys are hearing, I'm not going to be able to kind of replicate it here. Well, kind of. You hear that noise, but it's amplified when you drive. You know, when you go into first and you clutch it in, or you go in reverse and you clutch it in, like all of that drive line chatter. That's basically the LSD unit. The reason that happens is because the clutches there, once they start wearing, they create space, right? And the space basically allows some of the gears to have more lash, and they make noise. Why do I have these 3 differentials, and why do I also have spare V1 LSD units? The V1 unit, the beauty of it is, as you can see, it's all stacked on top of each other, and this top plate that holds everything in, the clutch packs, the friction discs, the spider gears and the side gears, they're all kind of just pinched together, and it's affixed within the differential, which means that when you shim it, and the reason you shim it is to get the right backlash between the ring gear and the pinion gear, to make sure that you have even wear. You don't have wear on like the outside versus the inside, or too far in or too far out, right? So once you shim that unit, you can basically not have to redo the backlash, even if you take out this LSD unit and replace the clutches going forward. With the V2 unit, because it's kind of a screw-on cap, depending on how far you tighten this, once you put everything back together, how far you tighten it will actually matter from a point of view of having this width, so to speak, change every time. So you have to reshim it. I have talked to Luca from Racing Diffs quite extensively, and look through their videos. They have a lot of cool, interesting videos online, so I know what needs to be done. I know how to rebuild these things. I just don't have the space for some of the tools that I need, so I'm actually going to be outsourcing the rebuild of my diffs. You know, I like to do everything as DIY, but I just don't have the space for a hydraulic press, and I also don't really have a vise or a place to mount a vise that could take, you know, 200 plus foot-pounds of force, because some of these bolts that hold on the ring gear to the LSD unit are pretty hefty. And some of the other specialty tools to measure like resistance torques, they're basically like special torque wrenches. I don't have all that as much as I like to collect cool tools, cool specialty tools. I just don't have the space or the money investment to do this in. So I'm gonna actually outsource it to a shop to rebuild this. And since as I mentioned earlier, this is a 410 unit and the clutches here are basically gone, what I'm gonna ask the guy to do is I'm gonna ask him to put in a V1 LSD unit into this, shim it for me, obviously, right? Replace all the bearings and all the seals. And the next time that I have to just replace the clutches, I can take this whole thing out for him. He could just put the clutches in, and then I can leave the diff in the car. I can pop out this LSD unit with the ring gear, have him put in the new clutch pack, and then come home, put this whole LSD unit back in, and not have to worry about reshimming. Okay, so hopefully this provides you a little bit of a interesting dive into the V1 versus V2 LSD units.